The more observant of you may notice that the readings today are not from the lectionary or Christ the King Sunday. They're hand-selected because as I approached this Sunday, I realized something happened. The last Friday was the 5th anniversary of my ordination as a deacon. And in those 5 years, I have not, I believe, ever preached a sermon about deacons, what they do, who they are, why I'm standing up here. And so I selected these readings, and I want to take you through some of the history of the deacons, what I am up here, what my voice is, and I'm going to close with a couple of announcements and some challenges for all of you. The first story, the first lesson we read, this Acts story in chapter 6, is typically taken to be the first administrative act of the new church. You know, people say to me, and I think it's an excuse for not coming to church, we ought to come to church if the church was like the early church. I said, what was the early church like? I said, well, you know, they kind of shared everything, and they sat around, and they were love. It was kind of a love-in fest, and everything was just so cool, and there's no hierarchy and everything. So here, look at this story in Acts chapter 6. There's controversy, there's a problem in the church, and what do they have to do? They have to put some structure in. So they appoint these 7 men deacons. Now, it doesn't say that in there. It doesn't say that anywhere. But in the Greek, the word is diakon, diakon. Diakonia, help me, Greek scholar Denise, diakonos. So that sounds an awful lot like what we call deacons. But anyway, they did have to get organized. Now, we don't know a lot more about the structure of the early church as we go through the New Testament, but there are 2 orders mentioned, bishops and deacons. In 1 Timothy, we get 2 sets of instructions. How to select a deacon, what are the characteristics and qualities of character that the deacon should have, and the same thing about a bishop. Paul mentions Phoebe, a deacon in the church, in his letter to Rome. In the Philippians, in the beginning, he says they were there with the bishops and the deacons. If you take an online Bible and search for priests in the New Testament, every reference is to Jewish priests. It wasn't until the time of Constantine, much later. We know more about these people through the writings of the early church Christian writers. The deacons were in the community. Their job was to interpret and come up and know the needs of people in the community. And the bishop came by every so often, not 3 years, more frequently than that. And the deacon was to bring the needs and concerns of the community to the bishop's attention because the bishop had the resources to address the people's needs. So we don't really, it's kind of, some people call it the golden age of deacons. A lot of those deacons went on to become bishops, sometimes against their will. I'm happy being a deacon, you don't want to make me bishop. Anyway, until we get into Constantine and the explosion of the church after the 4th century, when then all of a sudden the priests become more important. And actually, the whole diaconate kind of went into a demise there. We still do what they did way back there in the 4th, 5th century. We ordained a deacon, a priest, to be a deacon first. When Alex Large came to us, he was right out of seminary and he'd been ordained as a deacon. And he spent his first 6 months with us as a deacon, and then we all went down to the cathedral and Alex was ordained a priest. We still do that, and that carried over way back in antiquity. But it got so bad that what they were doing was ordaining the person as a deacon in the morning and then making him a priest in the afternoon. So the whole order of the diaconate just went away completely. Until the 19th century, in Germany, the Lutheran Church, some women in the Lutheran Church were concerned about the plight of the poor, and they started organizing themselves to address that. The German theologians began to translate that diakon words solely as service, because they actually can be transferred as ministry or service. So in the 19th century, there was an order of deaconesses that came to be. In the 20th century, the Catholic Church and the Episcopal Church decided to revive the ancient order of deacons into permanent deacons. So my title is actually a vocational deacon. And that's why when you come into the Catholic Church or the Episcopal Church, you may see a deacon. Somewhere about 2006, something was going on, something was stirring in me. I'm not sure where I was going to go next. And God was trying to speak to me in some way. And then Father Brooks and Father Walter Allen, who was here at the time, in 2 successive sermons, I think, said this phrase: Transfiguration is missing the voice of the deacon. Joe Flournash had been raised up, and when I first joined the church, he was the deacon, but he had to retire due to health reasons. So they said, Transfiguration is missing the voice of the deacon. It was, I think, that phrase that got me to go and talk to Brooks and start asking about what is this deacon thing? What do you mean by this? And we started, the first thing we did was form a discernment committee. We met for about 8 months, a very structured process to really explore whether this really was a call from God. But I asked him, what is that voice that you're saying? What voice is it I'm missing? And he gave me the shorthand that I'll always remember, because it's really easy. The role of the priest is to comfort the afflicted. The role of the deacon is to afflict the comforter. It's that voice of the ancient deacons interpreting the needs of the church, the world, into the church, and calling the church out in the world in service. I just want to read a little section from the examination in my ordination. This is what the bishop was saying to me. You are to interpret to the church the needs, concerns, and hopes of the world. At all times, your life and teaching are to show Christ's people that in serving the helpless, they are serving Christ himself. So it's that voice of afflicting the comfort of calling you out into the world and interpreting the needs of the world. Karen knows this, I'm not telling any tale at school here, but I have a lady friend who says she's my admirer. She said, I admire you so much. I want to come when you preach, and I want you to preach about serving. If you're not going to preach about serving, tell me I don't want to come. But if you're preaching about serving, I want to come and listen to you preach. So thank you very much, Ann. Her name's Ann. And do you know where Ann is right this minute? I know a few people do. She's in Uganda. She's been there for 3 months. She'll be coming back shortly, right around Thanksgiving. She's serving 200 young girls, teaching them life skills in Uganda. I didn't call her out to that. She had that out long before. But it's that heart of servanthood that I'm trying to convey. Now, I have another thing to tell you about what's going to happen in the future. I'm entering my 6th year as your deacon. I'm on my second 3-year letter of agreement. The bishop deploys deacons. It's a letter of agreement between myself, Transfiguration, and the bishop. We went down 2 years ago and had a conversation with the bishop, Brooks and I, and he said, yeah, I'll give you another 3 years. That's great. Just send me the letter. Now, what does it say in there about what you're supposed to do? I was telling him, let's say in the letter, well, how many hours do you work? Oh, yeah, there's a maximum of 15 hours a week. Isn't that interesting? No minimum, but a maximum of 15 hours a week. He said to me, how's that working out? And I said, you know, Bishop, some weeks I probably only just do the 2 services on Sunday, not much else, maybe a staff meeting. And then he said to me, in other weeks you're with a whole team of people down on the Salvation Army Canteen in Lyons pulling 12-hour days for 7. Yeah, that's how it works out. When I go in and do this year, next fall, it's going to be a little different. We're going to have a different conversation. He's going to say, how old are you, Steve? I say, I'm 73. I say, yeah, you know 72 is the mandatory retirement age for deacons? However, it also says in the canons that I can give you a one-year extension. I have no doubt that he will give me a 1-year extension, as many 1-year extensions as I want, unless I become a doddering old fool, which is why that provision is there. Then he can jerk me out of it. I just want to go on record. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not planning to pretend to retire for a second time. Not going to happen. God willing, I'm going to be with you long. However, and this is announcement number 1, Mark, Brooks, and Steve are looking at every one of you right now. I have been tasked this year with finding my successor. There's another deacon in Transfiguration to be raised up. I don't want Mark or Brooks to have to stand up and say Transfiguration is missing the voice of a deacon. I want a nice smooth transition. I can this time retire, and somebody else can take over. I'm not in a hurry. It's a fairly long process anyway. But that's announcement number 1. We're looking the search committee is formed, and we are looking in this congregation and trying to identify somebody. Maybe there's two people. I don't care if it's male or female. One or two, but I'd like to raise up. We have a good history of raising up leaders in this church for ordained ministry. Okay, I'll bet a bunch of you just tuned me out when I said that. Yeah, right. He's not talking about me. Don't look at me. Let me point you to this Philippians reading. You're not off the book. Even if you don't want to be a deacon, you're called by God to serve. Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility regard others as better than yourself. Let each of you look not to your own interest, but the interests of others. Let the same mind be in you that was in Christ Jesus. It's called to service for each and every one of you. It doesn't have to be service in the church. It doesn't have to be ordained. You know, the bishop said at the weekend when they decided whether they wanted me to become a deacon or not, you all, everybody who was there at that weekend, are already doing ministry. You're already serving. The question is, can you do a better job of it, a more effective job as an ordained person, or should you remain a lay person in ministry? In the Baptist church, we call it the priesthood of all believers. We all have a role, and we're all called to service. Look at this gospel reading. I think it's wonderful that the translation is talent. Yes, they were talking about money. But remember, a parable is a story, but there's a story behind that story. Who's the master in this? God. Who are the slaves? We are. Brooks preached on this. Mark remembers this. Mark remembers this. He said, what talent do you have that you buried? What talent do you need to dig up, bring out, that you could use in serving other people? You know what we got as a result of that? I didn't know this until Thursday. I'm going to go off camera here. We got Maximus. We got Gabriel, the archangel. Mark's talent was acting. He always wanted to act, and he never had the time to do it. So that sermon gave us all of these great characters that we've been having over the last few years. It's wonderful. What talent do you need to dig up? How do you look at God? Look at the way these guys look at God. The first two, how did they look at God? The Master. They saw him as merciful. They saw him as just. They wanted to please him. They wanted to double those talents. And that other one thought he was scary and vengeful. And so he hid his talent in the ground. Don't hide your talent in the ground. Dig them up. Bring them out. Brooks talked about pledging our lives when he did this pledge sermon a couple of weeks ago. And that's what we're asking you to do. This is my second announcement. I'm going to tell a story about Denise in the back of the room first. Denise, when she came to us, came individually to Mark and me and Brooks and said, I know God has something for me to do. I'm just trying to work it out. She was maybe even thinking about ordained ministry at the time. And after talking with us and doing a discernment, she decided to continue taking clinical pastoral education courses and to go for a chaplaincy certification. She's now the chaplain at the Vail Medical Center. I tell you that story because the other thing that we want to announce, and Father Brooks has said this for several weeks, and now we're going to do it. We will form a standing discernment committee with the clergy and selected lay people who will come and ask. It'll be there in the background. It might not be active, but we take very seriously our responsibility to help you unearth those talents and discern where God is calling you. It doesn't have to be ordained ministry. It doesn't have to be ministry in the church. It's service in the community. That discernment committee will be there for you. All you have to do is pick up the phone, call one of us. It's a little more than a cup of coffee. I'm thinking about doing this. It might not be much more than that. It might be more involved, and we will prayerfully consider with you, where is God calling you next in your lives? That's our commitment to you. I want to end with a small story about my own journey. Within a week, sometime during the week right after that announced that phrase was Transfiguration is missing the voice of the deacon was uttered in his sermon for the second time. Karen and I were driving on the village road in Beaver Creek to our home. I can tell you exactly where I was. And she said to me, do you remember what Father Walter Brooks, whoever it was, said about Transfiguration is missing the voice of a deacon? I said, yeah, I heard that. She said, have you been thinking about it? I said, oh, a little bit. And she said, well, you know, I think two people come to my mind that would be good. I said, really? Who? She said, Drew, meaning Drew Royster, our youth minister at the time, and you. I pulled the car over to the side of the road on Holden Road and stopped and looked at her and said, wow, you've been married to me for over 40 years. She said, yeah, I think you would do a good job of it. Really? I was speechless. And then she said, you said you've been thinking about it. Have you prayed about it? And I said, yeah, a little. And then she uttered the fateful two words, pray harder. Those are the words I leave with you. God is calling you to something in this world, to serving others in some way. And if you've been praying about it, I'm asking you, pray harder.